Hello, everyone. As you mentioned, my name is Payton Walker. I'm from Texas A&M University, and today I'll be talking about our work where we explored a potential attack that we call BiasHacker that looks to exploit existing speaker biases in current automatic speech recognition systems for a command disruption attack. It's not moving. Perfect. One second. Try to enter next. It's not moving. It would be my presentation that wigs out. All right. So this work is firstly motivated by the fact that racial and gender biases are a known issue in multiple types of recognition systems, and this persists even among current state-of-the-art technology in devices and other tech that's available and comes out today for our use. And in terms of machine learning, this can be caused by multiple different problems. There could be feedback issues if you've got bias in an original model that feeds into a newer updated version. You could have biased learning algorithms if you optimize for error rates. And in terms of the marginalized groups that suffer from these biases, there could be inaccuracies in ground truth labels or just poor representation of those groups within the data themselves in terms of quantity or quality. And specifically, we see these biases persist in speech recognition systems. And this is particularly concerning and relevant considering how quickly these devices are becoming more popular and the growing number of options we have in terms of voice controllable systems. And so not only personal assistants that we install on our phones, but also smart speaker dedicated devices that fully run on these recognition systems. And the presence of these biases leads to low performance and usability for certain groups. And in terms of security, when we think about potential threats and attacks against these systems, it becomes more severe considering the adoption of smart home environments. So now we're connecting multiple different, IoT smart devices that control some very critical operations, within our home environment, like smart locks, security systems, or even smart appliances. And the typical form of attack against, speech recognition systems and with these smart IoT devices is to typically inject a command. So an attacker tries to issue, their own command, hopefully going unnoticed, and that allows them to, in a way, control the device and use it for their own purposes. But in this work, we actually consider the potential threats and devastating impacts that can occur when certain critical commands get disrupted. And so when a user tries to issue a command and that gets blocked from happening. And so you imagine trying to, lock your doors with a voice command at the end of the night, and that command gets blocked, and then your house is left unlocked throughout the night while you're going to sleep. So specifically, also looking at the attack potential for command disruption and incorporating these and exploitation of these existing speech recognition biases. So this figure shows our attack design. So firstly, we consider we have this legitimate user who's trying to issue a vocal command to their voice assistant or smart speaker device. And this legitimate user can come from an underrepresented or marginalized group in terms of speech recognition performance. And on the other side, we have an attacker who uses some method to construct a disruptive chatter type noise that will be played kind of alongside the speech command and hopefully block it. And a typical approach to generating these chatter noises is to combine samples of not only plain speech, but music and then some sort of static noise like a Gaussian white noise. And so we imagine that if this chatter noise that's being created incorporates speech content from a speaker type that doesn't suffer from these biases, then when it's played in the presence of legitimate speech from one of these marginalized groups, then the voice assistant can actually give some sort of preference when it's trying to process the audio. So because of that, you could have a legitimate command being completely ignored and it attempting to process and identify the speech that's contained in the noise sample. And whether or not it's actually identified or results in anything, the main issue here is that the legitimate command gets ignored. So our methodology was to create this attack through experiments and demonstrate using kind of over-the-air instances. So firstly, we looked at 2 instances of live smart speakers. We used a Google Home Mini and an Amazon Echo Dot. And since we're looking at potential bias exploitation and the effect it can have in this attack, we consider multiple different victim speaker types. And so using Google text-to-speech API, we generated 22 speech samples from different speaker types for a smart speaker command for each of these devices. And we included representation for not only female and male speech, but also American English accented speech, which represents that kind of not biased speaker class that doesn't suffer from these issues. And then a few other accents that don't have as good a performance. And so British, German, Korean, and Australian. And also in line with looking at, potential bias exploitation, we generated 3 versions of this disruptive chatter noise that an attacker may try to use. So, of the 3 main versions, we isolated kind of 3 small samples, out of the larger disruptive noise that was created, because it's designed to just be played over that quick, part of the vocal command from the user. So we had a total of 9 samples, but the 3 types of disruptive noise we created was 1, looking at American English male speech and music-related content, again, representing that type of speaker that may get preferred and cause this kind of command disruption to be successful. But also wanting to observe the effect of 2 other types of speakers that can suffer from these biases. So we had one based on a female speaker with a Nigerian accent and a female speaker with a Korean accent. We tested 3 different volumes for playing this noise. In all of our experiments, the regular command, plain speech command to the smart speakers was played at 70 decibels. So we just tested different levels of this disruptive noise at 50, 60, and 70. And for each of these kind of combinations, we ran 10 trials. And so that led us to conduct almost 12,000 different attack attempts. And for each one, we recorded whether or not command disruption was successful. And successful command disruption could be not only, straight up getting the legitimate command to be ignored and nothing happening on the smart device, or it getting misrecognized as something else or something that's not useful or doesn't achieve the desired result. So this table summarizes our results in terms of scenarios where we saw instances of successful command disruption versus no success at disrupting the command for each of the different smart speakers and speaker types and noise types that we looked at. These results are specific to the experiments where the noise was played at 60 decibels. So one thing that we found afterwards was that at 50 decibels, the noise just wasn't loud enough to cause any command disruption. So no success throughout. And then at 70 decibels, when it matched the volume level of the speech, it was too loud. And all of the different sample types or noise types would mask the all the different user commands. And so at 60 decibels, though, we do see some variation here. And although we see, kind of varying levels of average accuracy and success between different speaker types and things like that, really when we start looking at the patterns of where we see instances of success versus no success is where things start to get interesting. And so from these results, we make a few main observations. First is that there's clear evidence of racial bias specific to the Google Home Mini device. The success that we observed was limited to only non-American English accented speakers, meaning, didn't matter the gender, but command disruption only worked against the different accents, not including American English. On the other hand, we saw very clear evidence of gender bias for the Amazon Echo Dot smart speaker. Here, success in terms of command disruption was limited to only female speaker samples, and this was true for all the different accents that we looked at. And then lastly, by comparing the performance of the different types of noise that we used in our experiments, one thing that we observed that was true for both smart speakers in all scenarios was that the American English male version of the noise outperformed the other non-American English versions, suggesting that the speech content and accent there does play into the success of the noise and could be some evidence of bias exploitation. So in this work, we presented BiasHacker, introducing this kind of new attack that uses specially crafted noise and exploits existing biases for this command disruption-based attack. We evaluated 3 types of disruptive chatter noise against 2 live smart speaker implementations and confirmed presences of known racial and gender biases that we already suspected. But we were also able to demonstrate that the American English male version of the chatter noise, representing that non-biased speaker type, was more effective than the biased accented versions of the noise that we used, specifically on the Google Home Mini, compared to the Nigerian accent, Korean accented female versions of the chatter noise. The American English male version improved upon attack success by 112 and 121% respectively. And on the Amazon Echo Dot, it improved attack success by 42 and 69%. So, if anything, our results reveal that, there's certainly threat potential there for this type of attack and exploiting these biases, and some viability. And it's important to note that this attack can be launched against any voice controllable system. It doesn't just have to be a smart speaker. Anything that accepts these critical commands could be exploited in this way, as long as they're using a speech recognition system that suffers and still maintains these biases. So for future work, we're planning to look at more sophisticated techniques for noise generation, which can obviously lead into additional attack goals. So generating a noise that not only blocks a user's command, but you could potentially slip in a command intentionally that you want to have recognized. And then obviously by demonstrating that this biases can be exploited in this way, it opens up another line of research in terms of potential defenses. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions already? Yes, please.
I have two quick questions. The first is just a technical detail. Was the noise, the speech noise, also generated via text-to-speech?
No. So the disruptive noise, we sourced the plain speech samples from TED Talks, videos of TED Talks available on YouTube, and then also music videos available on YouTube, just specifically looking for ones that correlated with the speaker type we were looking for. And then we generated the Gaussian white noise sample and just combined the 3 of those using a software called Audacity.
Great, thank you. I'm also curious about the timing of when the disruptive noise is played. For example, if you interrupt a command halfway through, how does that affect the viability of this attack rather than interrupting the entire command?
Yeah. So for our experiments, we specifically designed it and played it in a way so that the noise was played to overlap the command part of the speech. So when you issue a command to a smart speaker, you get the wake word, and there's like a small, 1 second gap of time, short space, and then the actual command part. So in our experiments, we just for simplicity and because it was a scenario we could reproduce, we used the hang up command for like an active call scenario. So we had the devices connected with an active call to another smart speaker, and the user's trying to issue a hang up command to end that call. And so what we did was we had it play the wake word so that it gets activated, and then the noise itself was just played over that one single part of the command. In terms of it being successful with just masking part of it, I would suspect that there's certainly potential there, depending on what part you can copy, or can mask. So if you mask like the first half of the word, it can be harder to identify the word based on the last half, but also depending on what the command is, and the system, Google or Alexa's like recognizability with that command. They still may be able to recognize it. Because one thing we observed was that like the wake word is actually pretty well recognized even under like noisy conditions compared to actual like command part of the word. So just depending on what it is, they could still be successful if you mask just part of the word.
Other questions?
Thank you for the presentation. How audible would be this attack? So if I say a command and then I hear there's like some noise coming in, I would recognize it, or is it like very silent and still?
So we're imagining, well, first thing is our results showed that this can be successful when the noise is 10 decibels quieter than the normal speech. And so depending on what scenario you're in, obviously, depending on the user, if you're hyper aware or if you like live in a house just that's completely silent all the time, you would absolutely notice that some random noise got injected. But there are also a lot of use cases. Like me, I typically always have a TV on in my house somewhere, music playing, something like that. And so in those cases, you could slip in this like small short bit of noise that would go, seemingly benign. And depending on the type of, static noise you may include into it, you can make it sound like, a lawnmower going off or a train horn or something, which those are noises that you think you'd recognize, but like in actual living situations, they're very benign in the sense that you don't really give it a second thought when you do hear it. You're just like, oh, lawnmower, move on to the next thing. So depending on the scenario, yes, it could be recognized, but we imagine obviously this to be applied for attack scenarios where a small bit of noise could go pretty undetected.
Any other question at the moment? Is it possible that those recognition systems are tweaked towards better recognizing live voices than those generated through WaveNet?
I'd like to say yes, but actually no, from what I've seen. So one precursor to the accented versions of the command speech that we used was that we tested them all without any noise. We confirmed that all of these, machine-generated speech samples did have 100% accuracy when you play them without any presence of noise. And, I'd like to think that in a situation where if you have live speech compared to like a machine-generated noise, that it would be able to distinguish the two. But on that same note, when I'm at home just talking in a conversation, my devices will wake up to something they hear on a commercial. And so I don't think it's definitely possible, and you can certainly distinguish between live and injected noise in that way, but I don't think it's currently implemented in these recognition systems.
And do you have any data or suspicion if, because the chatter noise was one male, American accented male, and two female accented voices. Mm-hmm. Is it possible that the different frequency ranges just make the male voice more likely to be successful as a chatter noise? So did you also try it with the Nigerian male accented voice, for example, to see if that changes the results?
We did not. We did do a sort of kind of pre-inspection of these different versions of the chatter noise once we created them, inspecting them in the frequency and power spectrum domains to confirm that there wasn't any significant kind of differences in the frequencies that were present. Obviously, with live human speech, there are those distinct frequency differences between males and females, but for machine-generated
one octave
speech, difference.
Yeah.
And in the presence, it being something that combines like the Gaussian white noise that has like a full frequency, masking spectrum, we ensured that in terms of the frequencies that were present and when it's being played, there weren't that significant difference. So I think it does have more to do with the actual pronunciation of words and things like that that make them more identifiable.
Got it. Any other question? If not, then thanks again.
Thank you. So I think we're actually have the tools to go ahead and mitigate something like this. It's just kind of taking the devices one step further. So for instance, on current smart speakers, I think in the past year or two, they've had this voice profile feature implemented on it. And so you can train your voice profile so that if, were to order something for shopping, it recognizes your voice and it uses your payment and shipping information versus like your roommate or something like that. But it's not the capability or the options aren't there to say, this is my voice profile, only respond to my voice, kind of thing. And so if you just added that kind of one extra, bit of permission, I guess, on your device to say, like, here's my voice profile, and I want you to prioritize my voice over anything else you hear, no matter what. I think that would be a way to mitigate something like this. And yeah, so something like that. Yeah. And obviously, if you can fix the biases in the machine learning and improve the model so that they're not like that, that would be best.
Thanks again.
Thank you.